Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. We have got a jam-packed program for you today. A little later in the program, our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz and our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera are going to be joining us to talk a whole wide range of different topics and things happening all across the border. But first, as always, let's go ahead and start today by taking a look at what's trending across the border, starting with shots were reportedly fired at a U.S. Border Patrol agents during immigration enforcement operations in a in a Chicago neighborhood Saturday afternoon. Hundreds of residents took to the streets to protest the last crackdown of Operation Midway Blitz. Angelica Sanchez shows us how it all unfolded.
On Saturday, protesters and neighbors confronted federal agents and Chicago police officers in Little Village. Tensions hit a boiling point near 23rd and Sawyer. But that wasn't the only location. The Department of Homeland Security says Border Patrol agents near 26th and Kedzie were shot at by a male driver in a black Jeep, while others threw paint and bricks. Cell phone video shows agents get out of their vehicle on Kedzie. Employees of nearby businesses tell WGN they sheltered indoors after hearing gunfire and a crash. DHS says the confrontation highlights escalating aggression towards law enforcement. Chicago police were called for assistance. We're told an officer conducting traffic control near 26 and Troy was struck by a vehicle and suffered minor injuries. But those who live here accuse federal agents of being aggressive towards them.
These are people terrorizing my community, and my tax dollars are paying for it.
Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez says he asked agents for warrants and identification after hearing they attempted to detain a man in a vehicle with a child inside.
When we arrived here, there was an 11-year-old little girl trying to be dragged by these masked individuals, and the neighbors are trying to surround to make sure that they didn't take her. They didn't take her.
He says witnesses told him agents broke the window of the car.
Look at what they've done to our community since 10 a.m.
It's not even anger.
It's sadness. This is outrageous.
Once federal agents cleared 23rd and Sawyer, protesters turned their attention to remaining CPD officers conducting crowd control. Our cameras captured more than one protester taken into custody. It's been 2 months since the Trump administration launched Operation Midway Blitz. Those who live here say they've had enough.
I'm asking them to de-escalate.
Yeah, they should.
I live here. My daughter goes to school here. We're trying to go shopping. I went to Walgreens. It's ridiculous. It's enough already. This needs to stop.
Now, Homeland Security says Border Patrol arrested 8 U.S. citizens and 1 undocumented migrant during those operations. They also said that no Border Patrol agents were injured. Moving on Sunday, dozens of women gathered outside the Broadview ICE facility in Chicago dressed as characters from the show The Handmaid's Tale. The silent protest was organized by the Illinois Democratic Women of Cook County. This comes a day after federal magistrate judge schedule said she would visit the center to see the conditions for herself later this week. Detainees have filed a lawsuit alleging inhumane conditions at that facility. Time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, to speak on a subject that's kind of similar but still very different from the one we saw in Chicago about those alleged shots fired, and that is another type of shooting towards Border Patrol agents. Julian?
That's right, Rudy. On Thursday afternoon, we began hearing rumors that Border Patrol agents have been shot at from Juarez, Mexico. This reportedly happened around a big monument that's in Juarez, close to the Rio Grande, that we call the Big Red X. However, there was no confirmed reports that the shots actually crossed the border. It may have just been some sort of encounter between drug traffickers on the Mexican side. Nonetheless, Border Patrol agents reported hearing the shots nearby. And then just a few hours later, on Friday morning, we did have an incident, a confirmed incident, in which a number of Border Patrol agents spotted migrants close to the border wall, a little bit west of another border crossing between Juarez and El Paso. And the agents reported hearing shots very close to them, perhaps shots being fired at them from Juarez across the river. And that immediately brought a response from the Mexican police. As you can see there on your screen, there was a massive movement of Mexican Army troops as well as Juarez municipal police officers. They combed an entire neighborhood for several hours looking for the alleged shooters. After several hours of searching, asking, and just patrolling, they gave up and they didn't find anybody. Of course, our first thought was, is this related in any way to the bounty, the $10,000 bounty that drug traffickers in Mexico allegedly had placed on U.S. Immigration Enforcement officers and agents? So far, we see no indication that this was related in any way to a conspiracy or a threat. More likely, I am told by sources, this was an incident in which border agents were about to arrest a group of migrants and possibly one of the smugglers with them. And that's when they heard shots originating from Juarez. Nobody was hurt. The border agents did not return fire. And this incident is still under investigation on both sides of the border.
Now, I did want to ask you, Julian, only because, so often reporting here, for example, myself and Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent, we've talked about Roma, Texas and Rio Grande City, those kind of rural areas of the Rio Grande Valley down here in South Texas. I myself, for example, reported about 5 years ago about laser pointers being shined at officers, both Border Patrol and local law enforcement officers in the Roma area. And the thing that made it different from, a typical laser pointer being shined across wherever is that these lasers that were shining on these law enforcement vehicles were steady, which indicates that they were on some kind of tripod. I don't know if you at home has ever tried to shine a laser pointer on something at a far distance. It kind of bounces around. But that's typically the story we hear, these kinds of almost, threats against officials. Have you ever heard of any actual shots being fired at border officials from across the Rio Grande?
Well, there have been numerous incidents over the years. I remember one when I first got back to El Paso, in which smugglers put up a sign very close to the river, warning Border Patrol agents that, quote, bullets also cross the border. And this came after a news conference, stories that we reported on, in which the Border Patrol announced its border most wanted for that year. And the number one target was the head of La Línea drug cartel at the time. And the number two target, and we think that's where originated the threats a few years ago, was the, quote, smuggling kingpin, migrant smuggling kingpin. So, they do watch. And the truth is, like you said, there's nothing to prevent somebody from aiming a weapon at officers on our side of the border who are on duty, except that unwritten rule that Mexico has with its own, local authorities or state authorities or whatever, or federal authorities, I'm sorry, that don't make trouble. You make trouble for yourself, you make trouble for us, you make trouble for everybody, plus you're going to end up in a cage in the U.S. for the rest of your life. So it's kind of an unwritten rule, but the threat is always there. And in this case, maybe we had a situation last Friday in which some low-level smugglers didn't want to see the capture of their leader, and maybe that's why they fired the shots. We don't know. The investigation is ongoing.
Yeah, and with all the recent downward trend with encounters of humans being trafficked across the border, the human smugglers, it's almost like desperation. It kind of smells like desperation a little bit, trying to protect their avenue for income there. But moving on, you said something earlier a moment ago about, the state or having rules. There's some new reporting that you have on some issues with Michoacan and apparently some funding coming their way to quote unquote fix it. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, Rudy. This all stems from an incident that we reported on last week, in which a few days ago, the mayor of the second largest city in the state of Michoacan was killed. And he was killed after getting numerous threats and soliciting the assistance of the Mexican federal government. The Mexican federal government sent 200 National Guard troops to protect them. However, the assassins, we hear about maybe a group of 3 people, somehow made it through that National Guard fortification, got close to the mayor, and shot him to death. Now, that brought on a firestorm of criticism against the federal government. And it brought up questions raised in some opposition circles. Well, who's really in control of certain parts of Mexico? The traffickers or the federal government? So after all that firestorm, President Claudia Sheinbaum got her cabinet together, and they all crafted a plan, a public safety plan to restore control and peace in the state of Michoacan. Over there on your screen, you see highlights of the plan. Primarily, there's several stages. So it's a massive investment not in law enforcement, but in social programs. President Sheinbaum does not believe in going to war with the drug traffickers. She has said that literally several times on national television. So she believes in preventing crime by assisting the community, by getting people out of poverty, and maybe they'll avoid getting recruited by drug traffickers. What you see in the map is a planned deployment of 10,000 Mexican National Guard troops in the state of Michoacan. Now, I got to tell you, it sounds like a lot. It also mentions a plan to safeguard the warehouses, the factories, and some of the venues where avocados and lemon are grown, processed, and shipped to other places, including the United States. Why? Because the cartels over there in Michoacan are heavy on extortioning farmers who grow those cash crops. So part of this national security plan for Michoacan includes protecting those industries. I got to tell you, really, that the plan is facing criticism because there are already 5,000 Mexican National Guard troops in Michoacan, in the violence in well-identified places is still going on. So bringing in another 5,000, some people are questioning, what is this going to do? Now, in fairness to the Mexican government, they say that they have a very specific plan for the deployment. They plan, quote, to seal the state of Michoacan so that criminals cannot get in or out. What does that mean? That means getting more soldiers into checkpoints, perhaps establishing more highway checkpoints. But I got to tell you that these checkpoints have operated for decades, and still the drug trafficking has gone on. So it's obvious that the plan is very comprehensive, lots of spending on social programs, but there's still a lot of criticism from inside Mexico, from the opposition. Where is the real law enforcement response? The role of the National Guard is not going to be to go knock down doors and drag out people. They're going to be pretty much stationary. In some cases, there will be some intelligence work, but they're very clear that they'll pass on that intelligence to civil authorities like the federal police. So there's still a lot of criticism, a big vacuum as far as are we really doing something about the drug cartels in Michoacan and other states in Mexico.
You know, speaking of the federal government in Mexico, while they're working on that, they also have another big event that they have to make sure that the country is ready to safely host, and that is the upcoming World Cup. What can you tell us about the preparations underway for that massive tri-national event?
Absolutely, Rudy. Today, the president of Mexico went on her daily news conference, and she spoke about security efforts, massive security efforts that will be in place next year for the start of the World Cup, which next year is taking place in Mexico, the United States, and Canada simultaneously. The opening game is going to be in Mexico City. And obviously, that's the main target of the security efforts. What I'm told, what I hear, is that there's going to be 3,000 security cameras with face recognition and artificial intelligence software that will be screening every single international traveler at both Mexico City airports. And the point of that is to make sure that nobody who's on any international criminal list is able to come into Mexico and then either disrupting the World Cup games or making his way north to the U.S. and Canada and doing disruption over there. So it's a very comprehensive effort. Also, there's a lot of investment in the stadiums and in the infrastructure of how you get to those stadiums, including security at subways, trains, buses. So they're doing a lot of careful planning for this event, which they expect is going to bring 5.5 million international visitors to Mexico during the months of June and July of next year. That's a lot of people. Obviously, not all of them are going to get into the stadiums, but just like in the Super Bowl, a lot of people go to the city where the Super Bowl is being played to enjoy the environment, to be part of the events, the parties, and then just watch the big game in an establishment somewhere.
Yeah, it should be an interesting test, too, of how well they can combine all those efforts with all the little efforts. Well, I shouldn't say little, but the efforts they have ongoing to fight the cartel within their country. So, yeah, it should be an interesting World Cup. We'll see how it progresses, and we'll definitely, come back to how that Michoacan plan is going in the future. It should be. It's one thing you did mention was that it's the focus for President Sheinbaum is on those social programs, which her predecessor, President Obrador, also was a big proponent of, rather than actually fighting the cartel head on. So it should be a very interesting scene to see develop as she kind of continues what her predecessor had been doing.
Right, that's right, Rudy. It's a total of a $3 billion plan, which is a lot of money for Mexico, but 2/3 of that are going to social programs. So that's the emphasis. That's how she's fighting the cartels, trying to take away their consumers, their recruits.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Julian. We appreciate you being here. Julian Resendiz is our El Paso correspondent, filling us in on several different reports today. Stay with us, because when we come back, our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera, is going to join us to fill us in on some reports that he has filed here at BorderReport.com. So stay with us. Border Report Live will be back in 1 minute. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles here in Harlingen, Texas. Joining me now is our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera. Salvador, you've been reporting the last couple weeks on, whether Border Patrol, getting Border Report and Border Patrol confused there. Border Patrol employees have and have not been getting paid, and some of the things that they're dealing with. But now you've got some new reporting on recruiting effort, a new recruiting plan by Border Patrol to hire more agents despite the number of encounters at the southern border coming down. Can you fill us in on what you know?
Well, Border Patrol believes it needs more personnel to keep going on this mission of trying to stop illegal immigration from along the southern border. Especially keep in mind that it's for Border Patrol, it's hard to retain their agents. And especially during the first Trump administration, for example, Border Patrol lost almost 1,100 Border Patrol agents. A lot of them simply move on, they retire. Keep in mind, this is a very stressful, difficult job. You might be patrolling the border out in the middle of nowhere, often in either very hot or very cold conditions. A lot of the times you are by yourself, roaming terrain that is unstable, difficult. As you guys were discussing earlier, you and Julian, the agents are getting shot at. Their lives are in danger. A lot of times they're by themselves, so help is hard and difficult to get when there is a time of need. But Border Patrol has put out a call for retired agents who retired anywhere from the year 2000 through the year 2024. They're saying, you can come back. We want you back. We want your expertise, your knowledge of the border, and we're willing to let you keep your pensions. And on top of that, you're going to draw more money, your full pay, benefits. So it's a huge incentive for agents who are retired. Perhaps they're bored or looking for something to do. So this is as a way to try and increase the ranks of Border Patrol agents. Right now, there are anywhere from 19,000 to 20,000 agents working for Border Patrol. But one question is, considering the border is so quiet, if you look at September numbers, there were about 11,650 apprehensions along the southern border. So you're thinking, do we really need agents? Because right now, agents don't seem to be very busy. Obviously, not all of them work on the front lines. Not all of them are working along the border, stopping or apprehending migrants. A lot of them are in administration and public information, other areas, intelligence. So not all of them are working the immediate border with Mexico, but it sure appears, considering the numbers, and some people would say the success, perhaps there is no need to hire more agents to work in Border Patrol, considering they have been fairly slow since the year started. Obviously, years prior to that, they were extremely busy. A lot of them putting in oftentimes 20 hours of overtime per week. So they are, again, it's a very stressful job, dangerous job, and people can burn out, they get stressed out and decide to move on. But Border Patrol has put out a recruiting call, hoping to add an additional 3,000 agents to its rank. And but again, then it has to be the recruiting part, then the training, and then the retention, which seems to be the harder part. Then average jobs pay anywhere from $71,000 to $88,000. But it's harder money because, as we mentioned, Rudy, being a Border Patrol agent is extremely difficult, physically demanding, dangerous, and very stressful.
Now, I wanted to ask you, Salvador, because, for example, I had spent 10 years in the United States Air Force, and which, for those that don't know, it only takes 20 years of service to get that retirement paycheck. As a matter of fact, next month would have been my 20-year mark, and I've joked that, man, another 10 years, if I would have stayed in, I'd have been done next month. But, that would have put me at retirement at the age of 39. What kind of age, range do these Border Patrol agents typically retire? Is it similar to the military where it's 20, maybe 25 years? Or is it, like other government jobs where you have to hit 65 before you can kind of start thinking about that?
Well, in government jobs, you can retire after 20 years of service. So you can have an agent in his mid-40s and he already calls it a career and he starts drawing that pension and he can go out and try and find other lines to work. So you could conceivably have an agent who retired last year at the age of 45 or 50, relatively young, and then they're saying, well, come on back. We will gladly take you. We need your expertise, your knowledge, and everything that you can pass on to younger agents to help them be better at their job. So you could have agents in their mid-40s already fully retired drawing pensions. So it's very attractive to tell someone you can keep your pension, and on top of that, you can still get full pay now and benefits. It's almost a double dip type of situation. So again, this is a huge incentive to try to swell the ranks of the Border Patrol.
Yeah, and the amount of time and resources it would take to train someone up to get to, a person to 20 years of experience, that's got to be at least some cost savings there. I know we don't have the numbers in front of us yet, but it's definitely an interesting thought as far as how they're going to boost those numbers that they want to get up. But again, on the flip side of that, and I'll pull those numbers back up, we still had them kind of have these on standby ready to go. That this is the number of apprehensions total, 79, just shy of 8,000 apprehensions total for the entire month of October. We were seeing 8,000 in a day across the entire southern border this time last year, and the year before much higher. So definitely interesting that they want to increase the number of agents as these numbers continue to dwindle, only not even a year into the current administration. So it'll be interesting to see how many agents actually take Uncle Sam up on this offer. All right, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Salvador.
Rudy, real quick, I just wanted to say, if you consider San Diego sector, for example, they had about 950 apprehensions in September. So, but there's about 2,000 Border Patrol agents working in the sector. So if you do the numbers, you can argue, well, a lot of these guys really aren't doing very much in terms of apprehensions because the averages are there, let's say less than 0.5 per agent in terms of apprehension. So there's arguments to be made on both sides, but apparently Border Patrol feels that they need a lot more personnel.
Yeah, definitely, and it should be interesting to see if they put any of their resources into technological advancements as well. We've talked about that smart wall system, whatever that entails, because it's still unclear what exactly that means down here in the Rio Grande Valley. But we'll continue to watch it as always. Thank you so much, Salvador. Appreciate your time today. All right, that was our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera. Stay with us. Border Report Live will be back in 1 minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles. Have one more story to share with you before we leave you for this edition. Prisons officials in Ecuador say deadly rioting that broke out at a prison where inmates were set to be transferred to a new maximum security facility has left at least 31 inmates dead and 30 others injured. Authorities gave few details of the violence Sunday at the prison in Machala in southwest Ecuador, but the country's prison oversight agency said that 27 inmates died of asphyxiation and 4 others of unspecified causes. Authorities initially reported regaining the facility after only 4 deaths, but later reported the additional deaths following what they said was a separate flare-up of rioting. The agency said that 1 policeman was also injured during the melees. Really quick, wanted to remind you that you can stay up to date on the stories shaping the U.S.-Mexico border on your commute home, while going out for a walk with the dog, or maybe in the gym, as we bring you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in podcast form. You can get it at any of those apps at the bottom of your screen right now. And that is going to do it for us today. For more reporting from all of our correspondents across the U.S.-Mexico border, visit borderreport.com. My name is Rudy Mideles. We'll see you later.